Welcome to the Gen X Shift podcast, a show for Gen Xers who are navigating some pretty tough transitions and aren't sure how to move forward. I'm your host, Michele Walter, proud Gen Xer, former lawyer turned entrepreneur, huge Jason Momoa fan, and margarita snob. And I've navigated a lot of transitions in my life, from losing my mom suddenly to a heart attack to starting my own business. But I often did it all on my own because I was too stubborn to ask for help. Now I'm on a mission to give actionable strategies to other Gen Xers so that they can find the confidence, courage, and clarity they need to make a shift. So let's rock and roll. Hey, Gen Xers, welcome back to the podcast. This week, I am so honored to get to bring you one of my dear friends and fellow coaches, Jen Porter. I met Jen back when I was still working as an attorney at the Department of Justice, and I wasn't quite sure how I was going to start my own business. And I won't give it all away because we talk about this in the podcast. But if it wasn't for her and one critical question that she asked me, I don't know if I'd be standing here doing this podcast. Jen is a leadership coach who specializes in helping ambitious women connect their purpose with their work and carve out their own path for the second half of life. She spent the first half of her career helping Fortune 500 companies as well as global nonprofits and ministries to build strong, effective teams through recruiting talent. She transitioned into her second career after experiencing the transformative power of coaching herself. So since starting her coaching practice in 2017, she has helped over 300 leaders to deepen their impact, to find greater satisfaction, and be empowered in their leadership. Today, she focuses on helping women reconnect through community and faith in her new offering, The Radiant Leader. Her company is Transformative Coaching, LLC, and I cannot wait for you to get to experience the wisdom, the beauty, the calm, the clarity that is Jen Porter. I think that even though Jen focuses on supporting women through making this career shift, this is going to be a conversation that anyone is going to get some nuggets of wisdom out of. So sit back and enjoy my conversation with Jen Porter. Hey, Jen, welcome. I'm so grateful to have you here and for you to spend this time with us today on the podcast. How you doing?
Good. Thank you so much, Michele. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I've interviewed several of my close friends so far, because when I started thinking about doing this podcast, I realized I know so many amazing people that are of the same generation that just have such powerful stories to share. And so, of course, you were one of the first people to come to mind too. So I can't wait to jump into your backstory and to share more about your journey and the work that you're doing now, which is so powerful, especially for women, around helping them find transitions in their career or find a more fulfilling career where they are. So I think folks will get a lot out of this discussion today.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. And before we do that, I always like to let folks know like how we know each other. And as with so many stories of people that I've been bringing on the podcast, as I've reflected back on how I've met folks in my life, I have to notice what I call the synchronicities, those times when the universe brought somebody into my life and brought me into their life at divine timing. And we have just been able to develop deep friendships and close friendships to support each other through a variety of things. And I feel like you are one of those people. So for folks' background, when I was going through my coaching program out here in Colorado through the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, IPEC, and I think I was maybe I was still in the program. I hadn't finished yet. And I reached out to a friend of mine, Nicole, and was telling her just about some struggles I was having and trying to decide if I should start my own business. And I was a miserable lawyer and what should I do? And she actually recommended that I reach out and talk to you because she said Jen had just lost her job and she has transitioned into coaching and she started her own business. And so we talked, and you were just such a soft place for me to land. You had just such a compassionate, gracious spirit. And I remember, and this still sticks with me, and I still pass this on to a lot of people, that you said to me when I was stressing about, I don't know how I'm going to do this. How can I make this happen? And you actually said to me, well, what if the how is none of your business? And that was such a truth bomb for me. And I say that to some people and it kind of pisses them off because they mean, well, what do you mean the how isn't my business? I have to plan. I have to know what I'm supposed to do. It's not saying don't plan, but it's planning and kind of holding it loosely is how I took that, and letting things unfold in unexpected ways that we can't anticipate. And so I
That's right.
have held that piece of wisdom very close to my heart. And I really appreciate you sharing that with me. And then we became friends. And when you lived in Denver, we would occasionally hook up and rock climb. You were a fantastic rock climber. I was like put to shame by your rock climbing because you were amazing. But now you've moved a little further away. You live down in Monument, Colorado, which is just outside of Colorado Springs. So you're about an hour, maybe a little over an hour away from me. So we don't see each other as often, but we still talk. And I've been so grateful to get to have you support me on my roller coaster of a journey. And I've really appreciated getting to watch your business grow and flourish and see the work that you're doing in the world. So thank you for
It's
being
so
my
interesting
friend.
that you mentioned that conversation that we had. I absolutely remember it. I remember Nicole introducing us. I remember exactly where I was sitting when we had that conversation. And I remember it was late in the day, probably before daylight savings time, because it was dark outside already. And it's so funny that you mentioned about the how. The how's none of your business. I still don't know where I heard that, but I still use it. I even shared it with somebody this week. And I use it for myself. It's a way of saying we don't have to figure out how we're going to make this happen. We have to start with what and why, because we get really paralyzed in the overanalyzing. And what happens is we have a vision, we have a desire, we have a want that and we want to move toward it. And we get stopped because we don't know how it's going to work. And it seems impossible. It looks impossible. And so most of the time what happens is we give up because we can't figure it out. And so the work is start to name it, get more clear on the vision, and then the how actually comes. And what happens is when we put our desires out there, the doors open, the people come, the opportunities arise, and we find our way. But who could know the path truly, right?
Exactly. And what I hear in that when you say, when you explain what that phrase means to you, is that we have to get clear on the why and the what. And that, in my experience, is what so many people, myself included, when I started out on this journey, wasn't doing. We leap immediately to the how, especially those of us who've been in professional careers most of our life, very type A, lawyer brain who has to have everything figured out every step of the way. And that, as you said, overwhelms us and can often just prevent us from even taking that first step. But when we are tapped into our why, our values, for me, the values are foundational, and our what and the who that we want to be through that journey and after that journey, then, as you said, the how reveals itself. And so I think that's a really important takeaway for folks, is that if they're starting out in any transition, let alone a career transition, not to get so wrapped up in, well, how is this going to work? How am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to spend time with my family? How?
Yeah.
And instead, let's reverse engineer that process a little bit, is what I hear you saying.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Because we have to get to your point, we have to get to the plan. We have to have the strategy and we have to carry out the steps that are going to get us on that roadmap to where we really want to be. But the reason we have to sort of stop ourselves from that in the beginning is it prevents us from dreaming. It prevents us from having this vision and this desire. And so we have to give ourselves space to be in the what and the why, and figure that piece out first. And then we get to the how. But it's just a funny way to say, like, the how's none of your business right now.
Yeah, exactly. Boom, mic drop. Yeah. And when I hear you say that, it stops us from dreaming. I mean, my heart sort of swelled a little bit with that, because I think of so many people, my mom included, I think, fall into this camp. And I was telling somebody the other day that, as sad and depressing as this is to think, there are so many unrealized dreams in the graveyard. And I have to imagine that so many of those unrealized dreams never came to fruition because the people couldn't figure out the how, were consumed by the how at the beginning. And so I really hope that this conversation we have today helps some people lean into those dreams so that they can start to realize those. So
Absolutely.
let's rewind a little bit, because as I've explained with other guests and the premise of this show is that I really want to understand what supports us or doesn't support our generation as we're making any kind of transition. And I think relevant to that question is, what were the patterns, the messaging, the conditioning, the experiences that we had during our very formative childhood years? For Gen Xers, that would be growing up in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, maybe late 60s for some. So it's a big time span. But I just think taking into account the cultural, social, kind of the norms, so to speak, of that time can be relevant to understanding our patterning and our habits later in life. So I'd like you to take us back a little bit and tell us what it was like growing up for you and where you grew up in your kind of formative childhood years.
Yeah, so I grew up in North Carolina. So I have Southern roots, and I come from a family of really hard workers. And so that was a real value for our family is, you worked hard. It wasn't about what you wanted. That really wasn't a question. What do you want? What do you desire? What do you enjoy? It was just, here are the responsibilities and do them really well. And so I grew up on, there was a lot of farmland around me, and we had a small farm. We had a lot of acreage and space to run around and play. We were always involved in sports, and there's all kinds of social things that were happening. But we learned a lot about chores. Like, these are the things that you're responsible for. You don't just get a free ride here. You actually have to carry your weight in this house. And so, I learned a lot about resiliency and hard work and pushing through things even when we didn't want to do it, and really obedience to authority. And that was a lot of my childhood was listen to your elders. That included anybody in authority, teachers, any parent of any child, had authority. And so it was difficult for me to really find my voice. That's one of the big themes of my life was, I didn't question authority. I just did. And that did not, it served me well as a child because I got along well. People liked me, and I was like a good kid and a good student and that sort of thing. But as an adult, and even as a child, there were times where it did not serve me at all. And I didn't know how to stand up for myself. I didn't know how to use my voice when things were wrong. And so those are a lot of the lessons that I've had to learn. But, some of the themes are work, like just, it's hard work. It's not, I don't remember hearing stories of people who had jobs that were fulfilling. That wasn't the conversation. It was just, do you have a stable, secure job? Then you've won. Like, that is success. And then you just carry that out for decades. And so, the whole, like, what do you want to do when you graduate and that sort of thing? It's just like, I have no idea. I just want to earn some money. That was the goal.
Yeah. And I think that's such a common experience, especially for women. And you mentioned not finding your voice. And for me, I'll say, I don't even think I realized that I could be finding my voice or that I had a voice until much, much later in life, even the last decade. So that definitely is messaging that we did not receive growing up. And not only that, but I don't know if this was the same for you, but especially for me growing up in a small rural Nebraska town, it was laughed at if you wanted to embrace more creativity or do something outside the norm of some traditional 9-to-5 job. And so there was the additional messaging of don't dare to dream, don't dare to think outside the box. And I think while my parents certainly wanted me to do quote better or go beyond what they had done in their sort of typical blue collar jobs, it's still, the societal message was you have to be quote successful and you have to find one career and stick with it forever. And that's so different from what we're seeing in younger generations now. And a lot of our generation scoffs at younger generations who switch jobs every few years. And I think there's something that we could learn from that, to be a little more flexible. And while Gen Xers are loyal, we can sometimes be loyal to a fault, even when it's not good for us. So we'll stick it out in a job for decades where we are miserable because it's what we're supposed to do. And what else am I going to do? So how did you start? Do you recall kind of when you started getting curious about how to find your voice?
Yeah, like you, I didn't know I didn't have it. It just was so familiar to not express my emotions. I remember as a young person, I could not express my emotions. I couldn't. I would start shaking. My whole body would start shaking when I had to share how I felt about something. It was so terrifying for me. Uh, and so that tells me I certainly didn't know how to use my voice. Um, when did that come for me? I would say in my 30s is when it came. In my 20s, I was in a marriage, and at that time, it was just a very difficult marriage because his personality was so darn strong. And so as I should have been learning about myself and what I liked and what I wanted to do with my life and my hobbies and interests, all that, I should have been discovering all of that in my 20s, but I was being told all the things that I thought and believed and all were wrong. And so that I started to be silenced even more in my 20s. And so then in my 30s, actually, probably a big pivotal moment for me was when I moved from North Carolina to Seattle. So I had been working in the financial services industry, had really no aspirations beyond that. My husband and I at that time he wanted to move to Washington State, and there were a lot of reasons for that. I decided to say yes to that. I felt some inspiration for that and excited about it. So I went with that feeling and got a job with Microsoft. That moved us to Seattle. And what happened was my world was opened up to people from all over the world, in fact, and different cultures. And it's a culture of curiosity and so many different interests and people who look all kinds of ways. And I remember going to parties and dinner parties and would have conversations where you would share something about yourself, and then they would ask a deeper question of curiosity. It was like, oh, they're not like shutting me down. If this isn't like them, they're actually wanting to learn more. That was the first time in my life that I realized that was different. I realized that growing up, if anybody was different, they were shamed. They were mocked. They were made fun of. And I mean, I see these faces and I can hear these voices of people that did that. And so I learned that it's not really tolerated to be different, to think differently, act differently, enjoy different things. And so I just had no idea how limiting that was until my world was opened up. And then, working for Microsoft, interviewing people from literally, all over the world, Middle East and Africa and all over, and learning what people desire around the world, their dreams, their goals, their aspirations, how they got to be where they are. And it really was the first time that I realized there's so much more than I had ever realized. And then, of course, I went through a divorce, and really that was as difficult as that was. It was such a gift to be single, to be separate, to be set apart as a unique human and figure out for the first time in my life, who am I? What do I want? What do I want to move toward? Where do I want to live? Who do I want to spend time with? And
that's so powerful.
Voice.
Yeah. And I just want to seize on that point for a moment, because that's a really powerful insight, at least for me, because you're so right. I think especially growing up in small towns, and maybe this was a factor of small town, maybe it was a factor of the time periods that we grew up in, but we did not go deep. That was not in our vernacular. Everything was sort of at this more surface layer. And they're
Yes.
not faulting that or blaming that, but it was more of a surface layer because I feel like people were just trying to get through the day. I mean, these were pretty hard economic times back in the 70s and 80s. Parents were
Yep.
just working just to feed the family, make a living. Nobody was giving thought to, well, do I want more? Does this feel good for me?
That's
And so, of
right.
course, the kids, us, didn't get that messaging. And I'm curious because I reflect back and I feel like I've always felt different. I always feel
Mm.
like there was something in me that said there's more, not in a comparative lack kind of way, but
Yeah.
in a curious way, in a growth oriented way. And I felt different and weird because of it. So do you look back and do you feel like you had that kind of inkling in you when you were younger too, or is that not something that you feel like you experienced?
But for me, it's interesting you bring that up. I mean, I felt different spiritually. I've always been a very spiritually connected person, even as a girl, even as a little girl. And so that felt different because people weren't talking about spiritual things, even if they went to church. It was part of the culture to go to church. It wasn't necessarily a transformative thing in our lives. And so that I felt very different. But in other areas, I felt very much the same. Like I fit in, in a lot of ways. I knew how to conform. I knew how to please others. I knew how to perform well in school and in sports teams and socially. I did all of that pretty well. And so there was no reason for me to think that there was more because I was just doing what everybody else was doing.
Yeah, the people pleasing is such a common theme, I think, again, among women of not only our generation, but older and younger generations too. And it's something that I think more women are becoming aware of, that conditioning and those habits of people pleasing. It's a lot of unlearning. And one of the things I'm hearing in your journey is you said that you had to learn how to find your voice, and it's almost an unlearning of our ways of being. And
Yeah.
so so you got divorced, and as you kind of stepped into this, now I get to discover who I am and what I want. Take me through what that was like for you and what you did to sort of go on this spiritual journey, really.
It was scary. I mean, it was scary for me because in my small box, I couldn't see a life outside of what I had before, and so it was terrifying. And what happened? You mentioned climbing earlier. A group of women learned what was happening. They were part of the same climbing gym that my husband and I had climbed at, and we were no longer climbing partners after we separated. And they reached in metaphorically and pulled me out, out of the pit, and the isolation, and said, "We've got you. You're with us.
Mm.
We're going to climb together. You can, if you don't feel like climbing, just be here. We're going to go on trips together. We're going to hang out. We're going to do dinners together. I'm going to feed you." Just nurturing, strength. They saw me and they became incredibly important to me. And they were all strong in their own right. They were all very different, this group of women, but we had a blast together. And they let me grieve. They let me be sad. They let me be confused and hopeless at times. And it was all okay. My work, I lost my job the same year
Mm.
that my marriage ended. And I found another job that was even better. It was recruiting for a global NGO that had an incredible mission, and found people through that and just found my footing. I learned, made decisions like, where do I want to live? What do I want my house to look like? What do I want to paint my walls? What color? What kind? Just little things that I had been so controlled that I wasn't able to express. I was now like practicing, what colors do I like? What textures do I want to enjoy? What I want to do in the evening. And
And
so it was this incredible growth season for me.
how old were you when this was happening, when you got that new
I'm going
job?
to guess I was early 30s.
Yeah.
maybe
What a
32 or so.
what a profound experience when you're in your early 30s for the first time to feel like you were finally having autonomy in things as
Yeah,
simple as what colors do I really like. And I have to
literally.
imagine that's a common experience for a lot of women to have just gone through life people pleasing, doing what other people expect of them, following along to what other people want. And at some point, something has to give, I would think, that allows a woman to say, or any person, doesn't even have to just be a woman or those who identify as female, that at some point something breaks where we have to say, what do I really want? And so it's just, I find it really fascinating that that was happening for you in the first time in your 30s.
Yeah, right. It's crazy to think about, but I think your point around something has to break. It reminds me of the system that's being upheld, whether it's a family system or a community system or cultural or work system. We're all operating in these structures, and we're all holding a piece of the
Mm.
structure so that it stands up, even if it's completely dysfunctional and toxic. And it requires something severing or breaking in order for us to wake up to the fact that, oh, wait, is this even what I want? Do I want to continue holding this up and using all my energy to stand in this way, to hold the system? And, for me, it was a divorce. It was being laid off. It was, there's severing of relationships that is like a jolt. It's the gift that can come from that. It's the treasure that can come from the darkness. We go through it and we think that we're dying. It can really feel like death in so many ways. And yet, if we can persevere through those dark seasons, there is so much to gain on the other side of it. And when we look back, I mean, I'm sure everybody can relate to this. You look back and you say, that was the hardest thing that I've been through. And look where I've come because of it. I never would have gotten here if it weren't for those experiences. So how could we not be grateful for it?
But when you're in it, it can feel too dark, too impossible. And so, what do you think it was about you or for you that allowed you to just keep getting up every day and moving through those darker times?
Yeah, for me, my faith for sure was, I have an eternal perspective. Like my
Mm.
mindset is an eternal one. And so I know that this life is short and it is not going to last forever, and that there is more on the other side of this life. And so that gives me incredible grounding and peace, knowing that as hard as whatever it is that I'm facing is, it will change. There will be something that is way better than what we can see today. And so my faith grounds me, and it gives me, it like pulls me
Mm.
into the future in ways that are really powerful. So that is one. Um, you know, even though my identity was really wrapped up in my relationship of, being married, and this is my role as wife, when I lost that, it was really devastating. But even there, even losing that, and as wrapped up as I was in this person's world, I still knew that my life had value, that I mattered. Period. Period. Like, didn't matter what I did, didn't matter how I performed, just my existence mattered. And I think that carried me through too, that, it helped me overcome any shame that I might have felt from what had happened. Um, I didn't have pressure on myself to be at a certain point faster than I could actually be. I gave myself a ton of grace to sleep, to rest, to cry, to be sad, to be confused, to be stuck. There are times where we're just stuck, and that's okay. That's okay. But I didn't, I reached out to the people. What happened is, I can remember in the darkest times of my life, I can remember reaching out to people who would let me be not let me be in my darkness, but let me be angry. let me be defiant. Let me be cynical. Didn't need me to be anything other than what I was, and they were okay with the strength of my emotions. It was uncharacteristic of me in those seasons, but they were strong enough in themselves to hold space for me to be in that place and not try to pull me out.
I'm so glad you said that, because a couple of things are coming to mind. First of all, our generation is not known for asking for a lot of help. That's a generalization. Some of us do it better than others. Some of us don't do it at all, or only ask for help when we are really, really desperate. So first question is, what would you tell somebody to encourage them or invite them when they're in those dark periods to know that it's okay to ask for help or support? Where should they start or look to be able to find that within themselves to even reach out for help and support?
I'm not the best at it. I'm really
Me
not.
neither.
I know. When I think back to those times, I'm so strong and independent. That was another characteristic of our generation, very independent. And so it didn't occur to me to reach out to people. And I wasn't sure what they could even do. Like, what are you going to do?
Right.
But what was helpful is people who saw me and they reached in to offer, would this help? Do you want to hang out? Can I bring over some food? And then to give me space to say, nope, that's not what I need. It's not what I want. But here's what I can do. Let's go for a walk this weekend. Right? Just simple things. Can you text me once a day for the next week and just check on me? Because I'm not doing well. That I could ask for. But it actually, I have this belief that we have a responsibility to know what we need.
Say that again. I want you to say that again. It bears repeating.
It's our responsibility to discover what we need, because people don't know. They can, they could try, but I also have a belief that it's our responsibility to heal. We have to be healed and whole people in order to give to the world. The world needs us to be healthy and strong and healed. So I'm not saying those things are easy, but I am saying it's a pursuit, right? Before, when I was single, I was determined to get as healthy as I possibly could from all this past stuff, because I knew it would be like baggage that I'd be bringing into another relationship. And I wanted to be clear of that as much as possible. Do I still have baggage? Yep, I do. And it shows up in unexpected ways, but I have to be strong enough to be able to look at that and say, that's mine. Yeah. That's my stuff.
Yeah.
And those places that are still wounded, I need help healing that. I need to find a way to get to a healthier place so that I don't spew all of this on the world around me.
I think that's a really beautiful message, because the takeaway from that is, what I'm hearing is, if it's hard to even know when it would be helpful to ask for support or help, to start with small things like texting a friend and saying, hey, could you check in on me? Seeing if somebody could just go for a walk. And it comes back to, I think, what you were saying about finding your voice and learning how to find your voice with those small incremental steps, and starting to ask for and take responsibility for what you need or what you think you might need. Because even tapping into what you need can feel like very unfamiliar territory for those of us who weren't encouraged to consider our own needs, right? So starting small so that you're not overwhelming your nervous system, but so that you are still leaning into getting some help and support. And I think that's a really valuable takeaway from that.
Yeah.
What would you say, the second question I had when you were talking about realizing that you are enough, that you are worthy. That's so many, especially women, and I can only imagine men, maybe men just don't talk about it as much, feel that inherent unworthiness. And so what would you say to someone who feels that they're not worthy, that they don't deserve, that their needs should be subjugated behind other people's needs? What would you say would be a good starting place, or how could they again take some small steps to start to lean into the notion that no, we are all inherently worthy?
Yeah, we are. I mean, we have life. We were given life. And so that in and of itself means we're worthy of existence. We breathe life into our lungs. Our heart is still beating. There is purpose for us being here. And for me, it's all rooted in my faith. So I know that I'm a child of God, and that is where my worth comes from. Aside from that, it's harder. I think it's harder to find that strong foundation of worthiness, but I believe that it's in the heart and soul of every person. They know they come from light. We know this. If we're honest with ourselves, it's the world that tells us the lies that we don't matter, we're not enough. We have to prove ourselves, that our value comes from what we do and how successful we are, versus just that we exist, that we're a soul, a human in this world, living. There's purpose in that. There's beauty in it. There's meaning. And we often don't recognize the impact that we have just by existing, just by being ourselves, right? Because people aren't going around saying, you matter to me. When you said that, it actually lit up something inside of me, and it gave me strength to move through the rest of the week. We don't hear that, but that's our experience of our world, right? We receive that from other people, and we give that to others. And so it's this beautiful cycle of what I call generosity, the cycle of generosity, where we're always giving of what we do have, and we're receiving of what we don't have from others. And so even if we do nothing, we're not successful in the world's eyes, or have these accolades, or credentials behind our names. None of that really matters. What matters is how we are with others, how we love, how we give, just being ourselves, right? You just being you matters to me. It matters to me. And I believe you would say the same, that we're not friends because of what I'm doing for you, or how I'm performing in some way. It's simply the existing in this collision of souls, right?
Cycle of generosity and collision of souls. I mean, that's those beautiful messages right there, because that's such a good reminder for me, because, and I've shared this with you, that I fight a lot of nihilistic tendencies. I fight a lot of darker notions of, I don't matter. There's no purpose for me in being here. And it's a constant growth edge for me to remember the little things. And it's one of the reasons why every Christmas I watch It's a Wonderful Life, because that's what that movie is all about, that we don't know the impact that us being here has had on the world. And we're never going to know that. It comes back to, we don't know the how, and it's none of our business. So you don't know how smiling at a grocery clerk or asking how their day has been, how that is going to impact them. You have no idea. And so it comes back to trust and faith in a more global sense, whether you're religious or not, but faith that your presence here is in and of itself a miracle. You don't need to be religious to recognize that. It's a miracle that we're all freaking here, right? And so
we are miracles.
Yes. Like if we can remember that, and remember, I don't know how that's going to land. I don't know the seeds I've planted for today, and have trust and faith in that. That's a beautiful way, I think, for folks to start to really tap into that inherent worthiness. So thank you for that gospel. I felt like that was gospel this morning, so I appreciate it in a good way.
Yeah.
So fast forward a little bit and tell me, I mean, clearly, I hope folks are getting the message that you are an amazing coach in not only the wisdom that you have, but the space that you are able to create and hold for people to have their own insights. And so tell me how you came to coaching in the first place.
Yeah. So when I was laid off the first time, been laid off twice, I was still in Seattle, went to a dinner party. The woman there was becoming a coach and she was giving away hours. And she asked me, I met her that night, would you be interested in a free coaching session? And I said, absolutely. I've got a great topic. I just got laid off and I need to find a new job. And so there were things that she was able to help me see in that one session that I was able to apply. I still am able to apply to this day. One session. When I reached back out to her, I had a inspiration to move away from Seattle back to North Carolina, not knowing what that was going to mean or what I was going to do next. I just knew that I had to move. And that was such a big decision. I was like coming alive, for the first time in my life. Work was going well and I had this amazing community and I loved my life in Seattle. And so to move away from that was I really need to challenge this decision to know that this is right before I do this. And so I reached out to her again and began coaching with her again and was able to get clear on those just deep, deep dreams that I had had since I was a child that I had never uttered, like never spoken out loud to anybody. And she gave me the space and the curiosity and the compassion and the challenge to really draw that out of me. And so I was able to do what my heart's desire was, which was at that time was go to Africa, serve with widows and orphans. Why? I don't know why. Had been in me since I was like 8 years old. I can't tell you why.
Wow.
But I did.
That's amazing. I just to pause on that for a second, I'm just picking up on some themes of other conversations I've had with folks, which is to follow that inner voice. It doesn't need to make sense. The how doesn't need to make sense. And I hear that.
I had no idea the how.
Yeah, exactly.
The how, it sounded crazy to me. Like, you're a white girl. What are you doing? Why do you have a passion for widows in Africa? It didn't add up to me in my intellectual thinking. And so I needed someone outside of my circles who, I always say like that my decisions are untied. Like, she's not affected by the decisions I make, as opposed to the people in my life who are affected by the decisions that I make. So I needed somebody outside of those circles to challenge me and help me get the clarity that I needed. So I moved toward that. I ended up volunteering. I said yes to whatever came up that was in the realm of both anti-human trafficking was a real passion of mine at that point, and Africa. And so I said yes to whatever opportunities came up during that year and ended up going to Mozambique and Kenya and Rwanda and serving in different capacities just to explore, where is this leading me to? It ended up leading me to an unexpected path, which was International Justice Mission. And I was recruited to be the director of recruiting there, which it made sense because all of my background was recruiting. And so to be able to give of my expertise in a space that I cared about, and it was this blend of they do anti-trafficking work and they help widows in Africa, literally. And so I could never have made these different things come together in this way. And so it was like, and they're a Christian organization, and so that's a huge value for me. So it's like, yes, I'll go to DC and do this thing. And so I did that. That is where I met my husband, and that is where we got married. It is also where I got laid off. And what happened was I had been pulled into leadership roles, and I use that language very specifically. I didn't see myself as a leader. I never wanted the responsibility of a leader, but I kept being sort of like tapped or encouraged and pulled to be in these director roles, management roles, leadership roles. And I kept, kind of begrudgingly saying yes because it was just so uncomfortable. But I said yes to these things because I believed that I needed to be stretched. And I loved coaching my team more than anything else. I loved watching other people shine. I loved helping them develop and finding new tools to be more confident and do things that they really didn't think was possible before. And so you watch them grow and develop and shine. It's my favorite thing about the job. So I realized that was coaching. I decided to get my coaching certification simply because I thought it would make me a better leader. That's it. I had no intentions of having my own business, being an entrepreneur, or any of that. In the middle of the coaching program in 2017, I got laid off. 2 weeks later, I started my practice. I mean, what else was I going to do? I was like, well, here's, a little bit of a kick in the pants. It's now or never. I've got the severance. It's my runway. We'll see how it goes. And I just started coaching. And I was amazed that people actually got so much value out of it, would pay me for it, and so I just kept doing that. And so, it's been almost 7 years now since I've been coaching. And what I realize is, my sweet spot is really helping ambitious women who are in our generation, waking up to the fact that they have choices. They're finding their voice. They're strengthening their leadership muscles. They're finding themselves in these roles that are big, big roles, bigger than us kind of roles, and helping them figure out, how do I lead and take care of all the things that are important to me in my life. And so it's such a joy to get to do this work now.
So several spotlights I want to put on what you said. First of all, that story that you just shared about going to Africa and Mozambique and getting connected with these organizations, perfect example of how the how isn't your business. Because if you had gotten paralyzed and I don't know what's going to happen if I do this and I don't know how to make it work, none of that would have unfolded. And so by you, the other thing I'm going to spotlight again is by you following that voice and not getting wrapped up in the how, it puts you in a path that you could never have imagined, never have planned out. So that's the first thing I want to spotlight. The second thing I want to spotlight, I want to talk about this for just a second, and then I want to go into your work with ambitious women, is that the notion of being a leader is, again, not something that's really common in our vernacular in a way that is more wholesome and supportive. Speaking for myself, when I think of leaders, I think of CEOs or athletic coaches or Oprah Winfrey, like those, the president, like those kinds of leaders. But one of the things that I really appreciated about the coaching school that we both went to, IPAC, was and this is not necessarily, I'm not like, I don't get paid by IPAC to say any of this, but one of the things that I really appreciated about IPAC is the emphasis on leadership. And I remember the first day of our coaching training, getting the message that everybody is a leader in some capacity. It doesn't matter if you are a mom who has the job of taking care of your kids, if you're a CEO, if you're a high school basketball coach, or if you're a grocery store clerk. Everybody is a leader in some capacity in their life. And so can you speak for just a moment about what leadership means to you and what your definition is?
I completely agree with that everybody is a leader. And because I came from a place where I didn't see myself as a leader, I understand that not everyone believes that or sees that. And so, I always say that even a child can be a leader if they have a younger sibling. Like that little sibling is following that child. Leadership, it's such a big topic. It comes with a lot of responsibility. And I think it's one of the most important ways that we learn how to be in our leadership, whether it is a mom, whether it is a clerk or someone leading an entire organization. I have this belief that the way in which we lead has so many consequences, and we can leave a wake of destruction in our path, or we can actually leave a legacy of building others up, of drawing out the very best in others, helping others shine and operate in their strengths, to lead to the point where others are rising beyond you because you've helped them reach their potential, seeing things in people that they don't see in themselves yet. I mean, that's so much a part of my story is I needed other people to tell me what they saw in me in order for me to step into it. And I really was kicking and screaming with this leadership stuff. But then once I actually evaluated it, I looked back at my life and I had been seen as a leader since high school. I was asked to lead, the soccer team, the groups, like the Spanish club for 3 years. I mean, I'm like a sophomore being the president of some, club. I'm like, I don't even want to do this. Why am I being pointed to these things? And then I was looking back at my life and I thought, oh my gosh, I am a leader. Like, what am I now going to do with this now that I see this? And how can I help others see the potential and the strength and be empowered in their leadership for good, for themselves, but for others too. And so, I mean, there's all kinds of, methodologies and styles of leadership. I think it just comes down to being the truest self you can be, that we can be, and giving the world our best in whatever responsibilities we have.
I love that. You didn't say it like this, but to me, that's a really powerful definition of leadership, being the best version of ourselves and serving in the best way that we can with the responsibilities we have. Because there are so many people in, quote, leadership roles who are tyrants, or dictators, who have a very toxic, quote, I wouldn't even call it a leadership style. It's just their management style. Because I agree with you. I think being a leader is a much more noble endeavor, no matter what layer that leadership looks like. And
it's a calling.
Yeah. Oh,
not everyone should be leading in all the spaces.
Yeah. Right.
It should be a calling that we're stepping into. And let me go back to a point around when we, being our true selves in leadership. Like, that's hard. It's hard to be our true self. It's because what it requires is an unmasking and an unlearning of everything that we've seen modeled, good and bad, and figuring out, okay, who am I as a human? Who am I as a leader? And what is the impact that I want to have in my leadership? And the truth is, we need help with that. Talk about reaching out to ask for help.
Yep,
This would be
exactly.
a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
To say, I have some blind spots. I have some protective masks that I'm holding. Maybe you don't even know what those are yet. But we can tell when our leadership is effective and where there are some weak spots that need to be shored up. And so reaching out to a coach to say, I actually want to get better. I want to be the healthiest, most vibrant leader that I can be. Can you help me do that? I'm feeling like these muscles that I need to use, that I'm being asked to use, are really weak. They haven't been developed like an athlete, so that we're strong and we can carry more, right? There has to be a development of that. And so a coach can help come alongside and help reveal, what are some of those blind spots that are in your way? What are some of those fears? I see you holding back in this way. What's that about? What would be possible if we moved this piece out of the way? What could you do and shine in these ways? And, to your point about values, getting super clear on what we care about most and aligning our work and our leadership around that.
So that's a good transition into what you're doing. And I want to lay a foundation here, because coaching is something that I find either people don't know what the hell it is, or they have a lot of misconceptions about it. And so coaching is the kind of coaching that we do is a carryover, or was influenced by sports coaching originally. And so I think there's a lot of confusion around what a coach is and why it is helpful for people to invest both in their time and financially in a coach. So can you let folks know what coaching is? How does it compare to therapy, friends, all of those things, and why a coach can be so important to make that investment for yourself?
Such great points. there's a lot of misconception about coaching. And if someone hasn't experienced good coaching, they don't know what the power of it is. And so I find that a lot of people think coaching is someone who knows a lot telling you what the right thing is to do. And it's just not that at all. Maybe in sports coaching it is. And so that's where some of the confusion comes. But in professional coaching, that is not the case. It's not that the coach has all the answers and, the client is just waiting for that all to be downloaded to them so that they can, figure themselves out. It's actually taking what is already inside that person, that client, and drawing out, illuminating what's inside, kind of unearthing what's in them and letting them see it. So then they get to make decisions about that. Now that you see this, what do you want to do about it, if anything? And then if that's where you want to go, let's create the path together to get there so that you can move to the places that you really want to be. Coaching is transformational. We should be changed. We should be different as a result of coaching. Coaching I like to say coaching can feel therapeutic. It feels therapeutic, but it isn't therapy. Counseling is about looking back and trying to heal from something. But coaching is about looking forward and moving toward where you really want to be. So it's about removing obstacles and getting clarity on what it is that you really want, being emotionally honest with what's getting in our way and why we're afraid to move forward in certain ways. And then finding the tools and strategies that are going to work for that specific person, because every person is different. The pace at which they can go is different. The capacity for taking on, an action plan and trying new things is different for every single person. And so finding a coach that you really trust, that you can open up and feel safe with, but also be challenged by, that synergy where you can just say anything and feel safe is so, so important.
So I'm gonna be difficult for a minute here. I'm a Gen Xer, Jen. I don't like to ask for help anyway. And what you're describing sounds like a lot of freaking work, deep work that I don't want to do. I just need somebody to tell me what to do and I'll do it. And so if I want somebody to tell me to do something, I'm just going to go to my friend Joe and he's going to tell me what to do and I'll be fine. So why would I want to find a coach and let alone pay for one?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, coaching is not for everybody. If you're someone that learns best from a formula, go find the formula. Go find the program where you're sitting in a classroom or reading a workbook or doing a digital course online that's for the masses that tells you these are the steps that you need to take, and then try those steps or read those books. That may work for some people, but the people that come to me that I talk to have exhausted those efforts. They've tried reading the books, they've tried the formulas, and they don't actually resonate, or they're not able to implement those things in a way that works for them. And so they're left still unchanged. They're still stuck and they haven't made the progress that they want. And so I think coaching requires humility. It requires realizing that we don't have everything that we need as one person in the world, like a independent person. We all need one another in order to grow. We cannot grow as a singular person. So being able to recognize, what, I've tried this on my own and I haven't gotten to the place that I really want to be. Let me see if there's someone that might be able to help me that does this for other people every day, and then have those conversations. It's about being curious, right? It all starts with curiosity. I wonder what could be different if I were able to get this support. And I don't really know what the support looks like. So let me have a conversation with a few people and understand more. What is coaching? What is their style? How comfortable do I feel with this person? Are they resonating with what I'm working toward? And can they help me? But if we're not curious, if we're not humble, we'll never be able to reach out and ask for the help that we need.
I think that's a beautiful explanation. And just to add to that, because I hear I say that objection because I hear that from people. And one of the things that I like to tell people is that if you are somebody who has a particular goal, like maybe you want to get a promotion or you want to run a race or whatever it might be, if you just want to, again, have the step-by-step formula for that, sure, I can help you do that, or you can find that online. What happens then the next time that you have something that you want to accomplish? With coaching, the metaphor or analogy or visual, whatever it is that I use a lot, is that we can either teach a person, we can either get, how does that go? We can either get a fish for somebody or we can teach them how to fish, right? Like we want to teach them how to fish so that you have sort of repeatable, not that it's formulaic, but so that you can actually start to find your inner power, your inner
That's right.
strength, so that you can learn to do things, not necessarily on your own, but so that you have some strategies, practices, tools, insights that you can keep using on your growth journey. Because it's
That's
not
right.
just about give you the formula and then think that that formula is going to work for everything in your life. It's about teaching you your own inner resources that you can use. And that takes somebody who isn't just your friend. Because the other thing coaches do is that, and you said this early on, I think when you started working with your first coach, is that they're able to hold your agenda, to be a more objective space holder for you. Your friends are going to tell you what they think based on their experience and what they think of you. Right. Not always helpful. Sometimes it is. There are reasons we have friends, there are reasons we have therapists, and there are reasons that we have coaches, right? And so somebody might need like a suite of all of those. You might need a coach and a therapist. And that's one thing a good coach will recognize is when you might need to seek therapy in addition to coaching. You know, so real quick before we get into the work that you're doing, what would you recommend for somebody who might be interested in finding a coach? How do they go about doing that?
So there are plenty of coaches. There's no shortage. And so if you just simply do a search or ask some friends, hey, do you know an executive coach? Do you know a leadership coach? Do you know a career coach? And just simply reach out and have conversations. Most of us are willing to have those initial calls because we want to see if there's a fit, right? We want to share what we know about coaching. We want to educate people about coaching. And so you can always find people that will have those conversations with you. And then just, it's a little like finding a therapist. I think, it's referrals, right? I mean, like most of us don't show up to somebody without having some sort of a word behind them from somebody we trust. So do look at reviews, look at testimonials, and have those conversations. I want to go back to a point you made about investment. I didn't answer that part of your question. And it's something that's been on my mind recently, that we don't invest in ourselves. And this is a real problem. I was talking with, there's a group that I'm partnering with that help women who are going through career transitions find clarity, get supportive coaching, and get to the places they really want to be. And she was the founder of this organization, said the biggest reason that women don't get what they need is because they won't invest in themselves. It's the biggest reason that they're held back is we don't invest in ourselves. And I've had to learn that. I'm still learning that. Where are the places where I have enough confidence and am empowered in my being to make the investments that are good and wise for me? And so it's easy to, I'll have these amazing conversations with people every week, right? Every week. And there's a synergy, there's this vibrancy in the conversation, there's clarity about where they want to go and how coaching can support them, and then they don't move forward. Why is that?
Yep.
Why is that? It's not that they don't want it. It's not that they don't see the value. It's that they haven't convinced themselves that they're worthy of investing in. And so they're going to invest in everybody else and everything else. They'll invest in their kids, vacations, wardrobes, households. There are all kinds of things that we invest in, but when it comes to a growth path for ourselves, we often will say no.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest disservice that we can do, because then we stay in the place that we are and we don't fulfill, to use your metaphor, there are dreams in the graves.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot at stake when we discount how important it is to invest in our dreams and our desires. And even if you don't want to, if you're not ready to talk about your dreams and your desires, even if you're talking about being a more highly effective leader, invest in yourself there, because it's going to make your job easier. You're going to have greater satisfaction. Most people I work with have greater joy and confidence by the end of working together. And so all of that is so worth it. And we don't know the impact until we give it a try, right? Take that leap of faith and trust that, you know what? I believe in myself. If I invest in this, I'm going to be transformed. It's going to be different. I'm going to be able to look back on this and say, damn, I'm proud I did this. I'm so glad that I did this because I'm here now.
Yeah. And while that kind of transformation is nearly impossible to put a price tag on, we also want to recognize that, at least what I've heard from some people we've had those initial calls and they're all about coaching and they're fully on board and they are not financially resourced right now to be able to do it. And there's a couple of things to get curious about there. Number one, I think, is what you're talking about, which is that a lot of times, especially women, aren't used to investing in themselves financially. They will say, well, I don't have the money because, X, Y, and Z. And so the point of curiosity is that factually true? Because there are circumstances where the money just isn't there. I've been there, where I literally didn't have the money to pay for my mortgage. So I certainly didn't have money to pay for a coach, right? There are those factual realities. And then sometimes it's just more the stories that we've told ourselves that, well, I shouldn't spend the money because it needs to go to Johnny's soccer uniform or whatever it might be. So getting curious about the stories around why you're not investing. And if there are factual circumstances that prohibit that investment, totally understandable. And look for coaches who might have scholarship programs or who work with folks on an income contingent basis, because they're out there. I do that. Like I want to appreciate where folks' financial circumstances may be and also recognize that I can't give everything away for free, right? So, but look for coaches who might have some financial support if you are really serious about coaching and you would otherwise want to make the mental, emotional time investment that it would take. And the other thing too is there's a lot of great group coaching programs that are often a fraction of the price of what you would pay for a one-on-one coaching program. And so if you are financially limited, start with seeking out a group coaching program that could be much more reasonable. So so let's get into, tell me more about what your business is, the work that you're doing, and then we'll also talk about an exciting new program that you have.
Okay. Yeah. So I do leadership coaching is what I call it. It is working with women who, I like to say they've had a lot of success in their careers to this point, but they're waking up to the fact that they now have some choices. I mean, they've earned their stripes in the workplace, and now they realize, wow, I have a huge set of skills and experiences to draw from. What do I want to do? How do I want to spend the rest of my career? The second phase of life. What do I want to be doing? How do I want to be giving of my talent and my skills and my strength and my energy? And really helping them figure out, what is that? Getting clarity on, what do you really want? What are your greatest strengths? How do you want to spend all of that? And then figuring out, exploring various paths where they can align that. Sometimes it's right where they are, and it's maybe elevating to higher levels of impact and deeper meaning in their work, being more effective as leaders. But it is, it always starts with clarity. What are we moving toward? Where do you want to be? What do you want to be different at the end of our coaching work together, so that you can look back on it and say, yeah, wow, was that worth it? So those kinds of transformations that are taking place in the lives of my clients, there's no value that can be placed on that. And so every one of them, I can guarantee, is so proud that they made the investment in themselves. And it's, these are intentional decisions that they're making. They're saying, you know what, I'm going to make this investment in myself. I don't want to stay here in this place forever. And, going back to Gen Xers, we're used to doing it. A lot of us, we did what was expected, right? By others. Mm-hmm. We did what our parents expected. We did what society expected. And there's a point where there's an awakening that happens when we realize, wait a minute, maybe I don't have to do this thing. Or they're pretty miserable where they are right now. And they know that there's more. It's like what you had, there's more. There's more. I want to discover what that is. And so really helping them figure that out is such an honor. It's such a joy to be able to do that work and then watch them thrive. I want to tell a quick story. Mm-hmm. This just happened yesterday. So I'm working with a client who is in the middle of a career transition, and she is the epitome of bright, successful, ambitious. She's done the thing. She's proven herself, and she's waking up to the fact that, I get to choose what I'm going to do in my career right now. And she had these, we worked together. We got clarity on what kind of work do you want to be doing? How do you want to spend your days in this work? And where do you want to be working? And she decided that she wanted to work internationally. And she had 2 cities in the world that were her favorite that she really wanted to work in. And so she put it out there, and she put it out there and shared publicly, like, this is what I'm working toward. This is what I want to move toward. And that was less than a month ago that she actually declared this is where she wanted to be. We talked yesterday. She has an offer in hand from her favorite city in the world. And she has an interview tomorrow with another company in that same city so that she can compare and decide which is best for her. But what she says to me, I said, how are you feeling about this decision? It's a big decision to move. She's on the East Coast now, and she's going to be moving overseas. And I said, how are you feeling about this decision? And she said, well, I used the decision matrix that we worked on. I just ran the decision through the matrix. Everything lines up. So I feel really confident about it. And that brought me such joy. It's like heart bursting, because we had worked together to create a tool for her to be able to use that is embedded. Her values are embedded in this. Her desires, what matters most to her in the world, is embedded in this decision matrix. She runs this big decision through it and is able to say, yep, this lines up. And I was just overjoyed because she gets to make a confident decision and a wise decision, and she gets to use that same matrix over and over and over. Right?
Yeah. Now she has that strategy, that foundation. Yeah. That's huge. And I'm so glad. I was going to ask you if you had any stories, examples that you could share with confidentiality in mind, of course. And so I really appreciate you sharing that story, because that's just such a great example of what coaching can support somebody through, because she had her own insight. You didn't tell her, yeah, I think you should take that job, or what are the pros and cons. There was some deeper work that you did with her that included her values, gave her this framework for being able to make decisions. And it sounds like she's saying yes from a full body yes, like a embodied, like everything in me is telling me yes. Yeah. So give us some clarity, especially folks who haven't been through coaching and don't know what it is. What does that process actually look like? Like, walk me through how you bring somebody on board and what your program, what the coaching process actually looks like.
Yeah. So typically it's starting with some conversation. I use Zoom so I can see the person, they can see me. I think we can get to know each other quicker that way. But we have a conversation so that I can understand, where do you find yourself in your world right now? And where do you want to be? What are you moving toward? And then I share about me, my background, my style of coaching, and what kind of results that we can get together, so that they have a sense of what to expect. Then when they sign on, we begin working together. The coaching sessions are designed around the goals that the client sets. So they establish the goals that we're working on together. We stay laser focused on those so that we know we're getting value. I even have people evaluate where they are in reaching their goals at that midpoint. So, they do a foundational self-assessment, and then they do a midpoint to say, how am I doing towards reaching my own goals? What is the additional work that we need to do to make sure that I'm reaching my goals? And so that's a way to keep us really focused on the outcomes and what they really want. And so, every session is going to be a curiosity of, what is it that you really want to get out of today? And then we're going to co-create a solution for them. And then we're going to co-create an action plan. So the beautiful thing about coaching is that there's built-in accountability and forward momentum. And so it's not just having a conversation, it's an intentional strategic dialogue to help them move from where they are to where they want to be, creating some foundational steps for them to take between now and next session. That's the action plan. They carry out the action plan. The next session, we get curious. How did it go? What did you learn? What did you discover? What didn't go well? Let's get curious about that too. There's no judgment. It's just holding space for what is. And then we move to, okay, what's the next step? What do you want to work on next? What would you love to walk away with by the end of our conversation? Creating a new action plan. So you've got that built-in accountability because they know I'm going to ask, like, how did it go? Right? Mm-hmm. And you've got the built-in momentum because you've got an action plan. And I say co-creation in every mm-hmm. sense of that word, because it's not me saying, here's what I think you should do in order to move forward. It's saying, what energetically is coming up? What do you have energy for? What feels right to you that you want to take on? And then we co-create that so that it is within their capacity. It's their desire to get this work done and to take these steps forward. And they have created it. So, they're going to take the action. Now, if they aren't taking the action on it, then we just get curious about that. What's getting in their way? Because whatever's getting in their way is going to be a pattern. Typically it's a pattern of something that continues to show up. Example, you're putting everyone else before you. You're taking care of everybody else, but you're not taking care of yourself. What's that about? If we're committing to ourselves to get something done and we don't do it, we've abandoned ourselves. And there's a reason for that. There's a belief buried in that somewhere. And so really getting curious to be able to untether from that, to the unlearning that you talked about, the grace that we can extend for ourselves, to find our value and our worth and our identity. So then we say, oh, I do want to follow through with these commitments that are important to me. So it's this process that we go through of moving forward. And, I want to go back to an example of a client that I worked with, I'm thinking about, who was a new chief of staff, new executive on an all executive team, mostly men. And she is a very thoughtful introvert who is processing everything that's coming at her. And what was happening in these forums is she was not using her voice because she's thinking, right? She's processing everything. She's taking it all in. She wasn't the one speaking first. She's not the loudest voice in the room. And so we had to figure out a way for her to be able to insert her voice, her perspective, her expertise in this group of highly dominant, mostly men. And and so we crafted ways for her to interject, create space for herself, give herself a platform to then bring in her perspective that was so very needed. And so the confidence that comes from that, the embodiment of confidence and worthiness, understanding her value so that she knew they're missing out if she doesn't speak up, but finding ways for her to speak up that work for her. It's not modeling someone else. It's not taking on someone else's style. It's being in the fullness of who you are and in your full essence, and coming from that place to bring what it is that you have to offer to your team or to your family or to your community or whatever it is. But those are some examples of how transformation happens right where they are. This isn't like working on some things outside. It's like implementing real time what they're working on in their roles right then.
That's such a great example to highlight. And what's coming up for me as I'm listening to that is my own experience as a lawyer in a mostly male dominated profession, and I'm not blaming and shaming males, not about that at all. It's just that's how the profession has typically been, mostly male attorneys. And while there are a lot of women attorneys nowadays and transgender attorneys, I have had the experience in that profession as a woman and kind of my whole life in terms of fitting into these systems that we're participating in, like you talked about earlier, of feeling like I had to act more like the men in order to be successful. And I think for a lot of people who don't identify as men, or even men who may have softer energies, more female energies, it's nothing to do with man and female, it's just male, female energies, that can be a difficult gauntlet to run. Because what happens then is that you aren't showing up in your profession with your particular strengths and skill sets or as authentically yourself. And so what I found, especially in the legal profession, is that a lot of the quote successful women, particularly women who are partners in law firms, and I'm making a generalization here, so I recognize that there are exceptions to this, of course, but a lot of women felt like they had to have success on terms that were like men had to have success. And so when you talk about, for example, this client being a slower processor, that's me. That's one of the reasons I did not like being a lawyer, is I actually don't like being under the gun, having to think on my feet, being pummeled with questions from a 3-judge panel that I'm having to like respond to in the moment. That didn't feel good because I am a slower processor. It doesn't mean I'm dumb, doesn't mean I don't know the information. It means my system needs time to process and digest, and then I will come back to you with an answer tomorrow or like in 2 days or 2 hours or something, maybe not in the moment. And I think there are a lot of people with different neuro abilities, different backgrounds, different trauma, like we go through a litany of things that don't allow them to function to the fullest of their potential in systems or in professions like that. And so to be able to work with somebody to, first of all, identify where and how you aren't showing up with your full skills and strengths and as your authentic self. And then, okay, you're not going to change the profession. You're not going to change the system overnight. How can we support you in functioning in that system better or in changing your relationship to that system? So I guess I'm just curious, like, do you see in the work that you do with these successful women, do you see them often having taken on the characteristics of like the dominant male profession that they may be in? And how do you work with them through that?
I do see that. I have a generalization that I think women who have gone before us had that pressure more than we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's changing. But I do find that women feel the need to mimic the successful models that they're seeing around them. Whether or not they can do that successfully, some people can't. I mean, some people do really well to the point that it's scary. And they're so far removed from who they truly are that there's a lot of unmasking that has to happen to even understand, because there's so many layers of protection, right, that they've put on to show up in the world in a very scary and sometimes combative world. And so there's some women that I work with, and probably more often, the women that I'm working with have maybe tried on some of those different styles, but they didn't really work. And so they're just trying to find their own style and feeling like they're failing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the sad part is, and I've been there. I know what it feels like to have this mountain of responsibilities, and I just feel like I'm failing because I'm not doing it the way somebody else would do it. And there's, their style is so much more powerful than my style. Mine is understated, and I'm a little more quiet and humble. And so the work that we do is really centered around where are you being held back? Where is this getting in your way? What's creating that? What's stopping you from being in the fullness of your essence? And then discovering what those superpowers are. So the client that I was referring to, who was the chief of staff, we discovered what her superpowers were. And she was able to bring those with confidence because she's like, yes, that is me. That is who I am. And so bringing that into those conversations, into those executive meetings with such confidence that then people listened to her, and then we're asking for her input. Hey, we need to run this by, my client before we move forward, because she gained the respect very quickly, a matter of months. She had some aggressive goals. She wanted to change the perception of her leadership style in a very short time. But once she recognized that, oh, this is my gifting, this is where I shine, I could do this all day. Okay, operate in that. And then the work is practice it. See the results that you get. And then once we get those successful results, we want to do more of it. It's very encouraging for the psyche and for the soul, because we have some wins that we can draw from. And it's like fuel that keeps us going.
It's that validation. Somebody gets to actually see the result of the investment that they're putting into themselves. How long does, and I know every coach differs, but with your process or your programs, how long does the program or process usually last?
Yeah. So I have a program called the Elevated Leader Program, and that's a 5-month program. We're meeting twice a month, and then the action plans are being carried out in between those sessions. I have just launched a new offering called the Radiant Leader. And
I wanted to talk about that.
It's a little less structured. I mean, I am moving to a space of co-creating what the experience will be for a client, instead of having a one size fits all. You're really creating something that's going to work with their pace, their appetite, how quickly they want to see the results that they want. And so it's a little bit more open than it was in the past for me. But the Radiant Leader is really, it's this beautiful intersection of leadership and spirituality. And so for those that want to explore the deeper elements of our purpose and our meaning, and how that intersects with the work that we do, and how we show up as leaders, and how we show up in our families and our communities, that's the Radiant Leader. And so it's so exciting.
I was really, when you told me, or I think it was in your Christmas newsletter that you announced that you were going to be having a new program, and then you told me, or I found out that it was this Radiant Leader program, and it was just such one of those, well, duh, like that makes total sense. It's like because two things I think of when I think of you are leadership and spirituality, and so that just seems like such a natural combination. What would be some of the benefits? I hate to use the word results. That seems so I don't know, sterile or something, but what would be some of the benefits that somebody would get out of going through the Radiant Leader program?
Yeah, it really is about connecting purpose to what it is that they're doing in their lives. I find that when we are disconnected from our purpose in what we're carrying out on a daily basis, it is extremely draining, and we will burn out. As soon as we identify what is the meaning and the purpose in what I'm doing, what's the impact, why does this matter, and how does that mattering align with my values and what matters most to me in this world, that's when the fuel comes. That's when the energy comes. And it's when we can align our work with our purpose, it is deeply satisfying. It's deeply satisfying. And it's the kind of thing that when we have hard days and we have major challenges, we're able to push through that because we're connected to our purpose. We understand and have the perspective. And so a lot of times people have lost sight or never really discovered what is their purpose in the world, and how might their current work or lifestyle or family, how does that really align with what they're created for? And if it doesn't, where can you make some adjustments? These aren't major, like blow up your life and make all these changes kind of things. This is simple shifts to bring deeper satisfaction and fulfillment to what it is that you're already doing. And maybe it is a career change. Maybe it is a geographic move. Maybe it's simply shifting mindset. so that they can see more clearly. But it's a lot of the work that I do is around core identity. That is, who are you as a unique individual in this world? What are your strengths, your values? What matters most to you? And then doing the transformative work of what do you want to be different? Where are we going? Where do you want to move to? And how do we get you there? So the Radiant Leader is really helping women see themselves more clearly and shine in their radiance right where they are.
That's so beautiful. That makes me smile. Who do you think would be an ideal client or a woman who would be sort of ideally situated for the Radiant Leader program?
I do describe the ideal client that I work with as an ambitious woman. And I say that because there's already a fire in the belly. They are the woman who actually wants more. They aren't satisfied with where they are. They know that there's more that they want to access. So that's one characteristic. Someone who is in a leadership capacity where there's a lot riding on their responsibilities. They have a lot of commitments, and they want to lead from those deeper levels of being versus what you talked about, like the surface level of just the doing. We're not just trying to meet objectives for a company. That's not typically very satisfying for people. I find that maybe Gen Xers, we didn't grow up looking for deeply satisfying work, but we're realizing that we can have that now. And so we ache for it. We yearn for it. We're seeking deeper meaning in what we're doing. Otherwise, why does it freaking matter?
Yeah.
What are we doing? Spending all of our time and energy on work, taking away from all the other things that we love, if it's not purposeful. If it's someone who is looking for deeper connection, deeper fulfillment in their work and their life, that's someone who could really benefit from the Radiant Leader. Someone who is spiritually curious, someone who is spiritually minded, who sees the world from those deeper places of soul and spirit as it relates to, all the things that we give ourselves to in our lives.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you said the word ache, and I like longing, like that ache as it comes up. Yeah. So we're going to start to wrap it up here because this has been such a powerful conversation, but I have a few more questions for you. First of all, you have a free support resource that is being offered to our listeners, and I'll make sure all of that's included in the show notes, including information about the Elevated Leader Program, your website, the Radiant Leader Program. But tell us about the free resource that you're providing for folks.
Yeah, that's something I created this year. It's called Dream Your Year. And every year for, probably 7, 8, maybe 10 years, I do this exercise of taking stock of the year that's passed. What do I have to learn from it? What was the hardest parts? How did I grow? And then I spend some time dreaming about the year that's ahead and really reflecting on, what do I want more of? Who do I want to spend time with? What do I want my life to include? What do I want my work to look like? And then moving to a place of planning. So I have the work is to start with dreaming, because that's where we often skip over. Start with dreaming and then move to the planning. And so this is a guide that kind of walks someone through how to do that for themselves. And, I do it in January, but you can really do it at any time in the year. It's just about reflection and dreaming and planning so that you can end up with a life and a year that you love. That's the whole point, is to move toward more of what we really love.
That sounds like a really fun, empowering, insightful exercise. So I hope folks click on the link in the show notes and grab that free resource. And if people want to connect with you, follow you, where are the best places to find you?
Yeah. So my website is discovertrueself.com, Discover True Self. And then I'm on LinkedIn. That's the place where, I'm hanging out, I'm networking with people, I'm sharing content. And so Jen Porter Coach, if you look up LinkedIn, Jen Porter Coach, you'll find me there.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll have all that in the show notes too. And I can't let you leave without doing a lightning round, putting you on the spot. So, lightning round. Are you ready? Da-da-da-da-da.
I'm ready.
As I revealed in a podcast, I don't know, I haven't scheduled all the podcast episodes yet, but I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday, and we gave away the fact that I do let the guests know the lightning round questions ahead of time, because I don't want people to feel like a lawyer, like they're put on the spot and they have to answer these questions.
I would be like, I don't know what's my favorite movie. I don't know.
So I do give you a little grace. But so, okay, fondest Gen X childhood memory.
Oh, interesting. So the first thing that popped into my mind is one Christmas. I had gone to a Moravian love feast, and we can talk later about what that is. But
I say that word again. A what love feast?
Moravian.
Oh,
like
okay.
The Moravians settled. There's a big settlement in North Carolina of Moravians.
Oh, wow.
These beautiful love feast services around Christmas time where it's candlelight and they serve a small meal, and it's just a beautiful service.
Oh,
anyway, I went to that with my grandmother, came home, and there was a trampoline in my backyard for me as my Christmas present. And I spent hours and days jumping on that trampoline with my best friend. And it was like the best Christmas gift ever.
That's awesome. I love the idea of a trampoline.
It was the era where there were pads on the springs around the.
Well, you were lucky. Like I'm envisioning like the Nebraska redneck version of that would have just been some rubber like stretched out over some like horse tanks or something, and you just would have fallen off and broken your neck. So you were privileged to have pads.
Yeah, we were.
Biggest piece of advice for other Gen Xers going through any type of transition?
Biggest piece of advice going through a transition. The first thing that comes to mind is challenge yourself. When we're going through transitions, they're important. They are pivotal shifts in our life that we will always look back on, and the rest of our life matters and is a result of those decisions and those transitions. And so it's worthy of exploring. Where is this coming from? What's my motivation in this? What are my compulsions in this? And to really be challenged by people who love us and know us, but also objective people, right? Like a coach, like a mentor, like, someone, anybody, but someone that can really challenge our thinking so that we can make the best, wisest, most intentional choices in those transitions that we possibly can.
Beautiful. Yeah. Get out of your comfort zone, because ain't nothing happening in the comfort zone, but same old, same old. So got to challenge yourself. All right. Favorite word or phrase from your time growing up?
The first thing that came to mind was word up. Word up.
And that song just popped into my head. Who sings that song? Word up. What is that song? It'll come to me. My postmenopausal brain has forgotten so much information.
Maybe you can have the song that like finishes out the podcast.
I would need copyright. I'll see if I can get around like with copyright issues. That would be awesome. But you know what song I'm talking about? Word up. I love that. Yeah. All right. If you were a professional sports player, what would be your introduction theme song from childhood?
Oh, okay. We Are the Champions by Queen.
Yes.
And the reason is because when I played soccer in high school, we would be warming up before a home game, and that would be blaring from the speakers onto the field so that the other team and we could hear it. And the song is We Are the Champions. And it was just so stirring. It was just, that would be the song.
That gave me goosebumps. I love that song. Queen is always like, you can't go wrong with Queen. I love that. I have such fond memories of that song. I can't remember. There was something in elementary school that I think I lost, and I'm not a gracious loser, but I lost, or I missed a word on a spelling test or something. I don't know what it was, or we lost a softball tournament. Anyway, I remember coming home and listening to that song, and it just brought me out of my funk. So it's such a great song. Okay, last one. Did we do 4 already? Yeah, we did. What are you most proud of being a Gen Xer? And I have you helped me come up with this question, actually, so I want to give a shout out to you for this question. But what are you most proud of being a Gen Xer?
I think how well-rounded we are because of our experiences. And what I mean by that is socially, we had to learn how to get along with people. We weren't just sitting around playing video games and on computers. We were out in the neighborhood, like playing with friends. We're, part of social groups. And so the social aspects, the intellectual aspects of learning, the ability to work both with our minds and our hands. A lot of us did manual labor, whether it was on a farm or, making crafts or there, my dad taught me so many things about how to fix things and like dig fence posts and, all kinds of things that I'm not sure that people now are still learning a lot of those things, how to milk a cow, but how to use our hands, how to use our heads and how to get along with people. And, and then I think, I guess globally minded, I learned a little bit later in life. We weren't as globally minded, but just how well-rounded we are in being able to do a lot of different things.
Yeah. That's such a great phrase, well-rounded. It's not something you hear or necessarily think of a lot with Gen Xers, but it's so true. Like we are the DIYers. We want to figure out stuff. We want to use our hand. Not again making generalizations. I recognize with all of this we're making generalizations, but that feels very true for me. Like I want to fix some stuff, or I want a dude who can fix it for me. Like and like teaching me how to fix it. But we're the DIYers. Right.
I want to learn how to fix it myself.
Yeah, well-rounded. Thank you so much. I have a feeling this conversation is really going to plant some seeds for a lot of people, men, women, however you might identify, because the big takeaway that I'm getting from this, or takeaways, is to challenge yourself, to know that you can find your voice, that you have a voice that wants to be found, and that there are ways to get support that can really help you through these transitions and challenges. So I'm so grateful for the wisdom, the space and time that you're willing to share. And I'm just grateful for you in my life. So thank you.
I'm grateful for you too. This has been a joy and an honor. Thank you.
All right. I just loved that conversation with Jen, and I hope that you did too. So let me know, what were some of your big takeaways from that conversation? Was there something in particular that inspired you? And I'm really curious if our discussion about the how is none of your business was triggering for you, or if you found some liberation and freedom in that question, because I know I did. Focusing on what is the next step in front of you instead of how is all of this going to work out keeps you more present-minded, keeps you filled with humility for the journey, keeps you focused on just the next step in front of you and trusting that if you take that next step, the how, the path will reveal itself. So let me know what you thought of this conversation, what your big takeaways were. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite channel, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. You can also listen on Hello Audio, and take a moment to rate and review the podcast, because it really helps to get this podcast out into the world to more Gen Xers just like you who want to learn to make a shift. So until next time, stay gold, Gen Xers.